I have a new Spyderco review for you today, which I guess would technically be an accurate statement if I said it last year in February or June or August, whatever, last year. And I also am trying out new editing software and a few new things to test out and to learn Adobe Premiere Pro. Not that you care. The Polestar, named after some constellation shit, or someone over at Spyderco has a crush on a stripper. You know, I really don't bother to look anything up, but you know that. It's a lot like the Tenacious, but it's got that nice steel, pretty handle, and the higher MSRP. So let's look at the dimensions of this shining star of Spyderco's value or budget series not named Bird. Like the overall length and weight. The Tenacious dimensions are in parentheses. Blade size, cutting edge. I'm in love with the stripper. No. Handle size and grip area. How old is that song? Anyone else remember it? It's probably best if you forget. Spine thickness, handle thickness. Now my majority tween audience, may not get the reference. Tallness. What's a tween? A while back I read on Spyderco's forums, or maybe it was Blade forums, a post from Sal, or I don't know, maybe it was this kid, whose name is Tom, or Junior, Bill, Felicia, that either the goal or the aim of Spyderco was to provide an alternative to the Tenacious but with finer materials, but keeping the value, see Chinese, labor aspect to the knife, which is perfectly fine because the Chinese are much better at edge grinds than Americans. Of course, not better than Chris Reeve, so you Chris Reeve fans can shut up. The main upgrade, of course, to the Polestar over the Tenacious is the BD1 blade steel, which if you also Google HCR13 MOV versus BD1, you too can read people speculate which is better despite most people not doing any real testing or owning and comparing both objectively. But yeah, BD1, it's in a drop point with a flat grind and a satin finish. Now the Tenacious has a similar blade with the same basic style, but the cheaper Chinese HCR13 MOV steel, and not that good American Carpenter shit. Carpenter's the manufacturer of the other steel. But basically the cutting edge on the Tenacious is a fraction of an inch longer. The spider hole on the Polestar is slightly larger in diameter though. Not that it makes a real difference in making it easier to deploy. And ever since my first Spyderco, the Endura 4 flat grinds with sharp edges have been my favorite general purpose blade. My perception is they slice better, but again, that could be subjective. The Polestar's deployment is good, not as slow as the lockback based Delica or Endura that take a pretty hard flick for a quick deploy. It's almost impossible, not quite. This one I found has gotten better with a little bit of time. It's still not anywhere near as snappy as the Tenacious. You need a good medium flick for opening. I still get some misfires. Putting some 3-in-1 on the pivot did help a little bit. So the flush mount pivot screws are more visually pleasing on the Polestar instead of the whatever screws we have lying around, I guess, look of the Tenacious. The sentence that makes me question what my life means at this point now that I'm comparing screw aesthetics between two goddamn pocket knives. The Tenacious deploys easier and faster though, with a much lighter, more feminine flick of the middle finger. I wonder if that middle finger flicks are feminine guy is still around. I hope so. The knife is a bit too small for my hands though, either knife, for an easy thumb deployment. Who knows what your hand's like? Oh wait, I know, Pornhub. But both knives employ a liner lock that are comparable-ish. However, the jimping on the liner lock is finer on the Polestar. It's kind of like, much like the Spine is too. The Spyderco's jimping on the Endura and Paramilitary 2 and Military and the Polestar are all the same. They have the same fine texture without being sharp. The Tenacious has wider space jimping that's not as good. The handle on the Polestar is a texture G10 that's bicolored. It's called gray in the product descriptions. However, I see a hint of dark navy blue in it. It's a more grippy texture than the Tenacious's scales. However, I did buy my Tenacious used from eBay specifically for this comparison and also because I really needed another knife I didn't use. Both handles are similar in construction. The Tenacious has one more standoff on the back, and both are open back designs. The lanyard sleeve hole on the Polestar is slightly bigger, in diameter to accommodate a much thicker paracord sculpture, I assume. Both knives have skeletonized stainless steel liners, which means they have weight-saving holes drilled on the inside. You know, and I'm sorry about saying they were made from human bones last time. That probably confuses some new people. I feel real bad about that. Both knives have a similar weight and hand feel when gripping them. However, it could be said the Tenacious is slightly more comfortable because the edges of the G10 have an additional bevel all the way around the scales to make it a little nicer in your hand. Both knives have clips that are positionable to 4 places: tip up, tip down, blade backward, or forward, in whatever pocket you feel like. Of course, I prefer tip up, blade backward in my right pocket, even though most of my pocket carry is limited to an interior suit jacket pocket, like a boring person, where it really doesn't matter. My theory, and again it's just a theory, is a few knife self-defense classes made a big deal of fastest out-of-pocket deployment. I see what they mean, don't get me wrong, but somehow I think it kind of filtered out into groupthink where most people don't really treat knives like that. Personally, I've never had a preference before I started reviewing knives. I see why tip up, blade backward in my right pocket with this knife is a faster deployment, but I don't need it that fast ever. And plus, if a knife doesn't have quick deployment, a snappy deployment, what's the point in a positionable pocket clip anyway? What's the point of anything anymore? Comparison. First, the Tenacious and the Polestar side by side. Let me make this as easy as possible. The Polestar looks nicer, has in theory a slightly longer wearing blade steel, and a more textured scale for the handle. The Tenacious, on the other hand, the black handle's bland. It deploys faster and feels better in the hand. Go with the Polestar if you need that better blade steel. Go with the Tenacious if you just want a snappier, more comfortable knife. The Polestar costs about $62 until Spyderco raises their prices next year, I assume. The Tenacious starts about $43 for a basic model, or in my case, $27 used on eBay. Although for some reason, assholes think a used Tenacious is worth, let's see, I see one sitting here for a buy it now on eBay for $42 eat-a-dick dollars. It costs $43 new at, I think, Blade HQ. Same basic proportions between the Tenacious and the Polestar. I'll stick with the Polestar for the duration of the comparison section to trim it down a little. Delica? This is too small of a knife for me, but a lot of people like it. Again, my rule of thumb, if you remember, I've said it in another video before, I carry a Leatherman Wave. Multi-tools are more handy for me than just basic pocket knives in my work. The knife I carry needs to have a significantly larger blade and be lighter than my Wave, like much lighter. Otherwise, carrying a small knife is a waste of a pocket, and carrying a heavy knife is a waste of another pocket. I often use the other functions on my multi-tool more than the knife, which is why I tolerate the weight of the Wave. Plus, I carry it on my belt. Now the Spyderco Efficient. Sorry, I forgot to shoot this part, so I had to go back and shoot it. It may not matter to most people, but I try to keep the comparison section the same shot, the same focal distance. It's a nice fast deployer. The handle is a bit too small for me, though. I like a handle that fits my hand properly and a blade somewhere between 3 and 4 inches. Which brings me to the Paramilitary 2, my favorite Spyderco. Fast deployer, good steel, comfortable handle. Blade size is about, the same as the Tenacious and Polestar, but I prefer the deployment and the lock on the Paramilitary 2 because it's a little more fidget friendly. Let's throw in a Benchmade. How about the full-size Griptilian, since the Mini is more proportional to the Delica? I prefer the Griptilian to the Tenacious, I think. I like the blade steel. It's easy to sharpen, and you can get it razor sharp real quick. And it's a durable knife. I've beat the crap out of this one. Okay, the Rat 2 for people who carry the Rat 2. Smaller, comfortable handle. However, my rule about the Leatherman Wave applies to this knife. I would definitely pick the Polestar or the Tenacious over the Rat 2. Rat 2 is not really my thing. Too close in size to my, Wave. So I won't carry it. Are we done? I think we're done. By done, I mean like another 3 or 4 minutes. The Tenacious has been a knife people have asked me about to review for a while. It's okay, but I'd rather carry the Endura 4 or the Spyderco full-size Military or the Paramilitary 2. The Military and Endura 4 both have larger blades with a slightly shallower belly and don't have big trades off in weight. The Paramilitary 2, on the other hand, is just a better deploying knife, even though the blade is about the same as the Tenacious and Polestar size. The Tenacious and Polestar are good knives. I'd pick the Tenacious even though it ain't as nice looking. The nicer looking ones cost more. Anyway, the point of the review is there are better Spydercos for my taste for a little more money. And the blade weight and maybe the fidgetability is, why I like those other ones better. If you need a reasonably fast deploying knife that's under 50, there's nothing wrong with the Tenacious. The Polestar, if you have to have the better steel and you like the nicer looks, then buy that one. I've had all of these other knives before I bought the Tenacious. In fact, when I bought the Endura, I was well aware of the Tenacious and still bought the Endura because I wanted the longer blade. And I think at the time I was more concerned about, country of manufacture and, quote, blade steel. I care less about that now that I know more about knives. So that doesn't make any sense to you, but it makes a lot of sense to me. If you like this review, baton that like button, leave a comment, subscribe to me here and on the Instagram. Thanks for watching and listening to my rambling and my scratchy voice.